Hi, I'm Marissa, and this is my corner. My anime corner. This is a show where I, a person who never really watched anime, gets to come and talk about anime with you guys. Okay? So, I always loved animation, right? But I never really got into anime. When my friends were staying up late to watch like Inuyasha or Evangelion on Adult Swim, I took the anime block as my cue to peace out and get some sleep. I have night terrors. Anyway, it's not that I wasn't interested in the shows, it's just that I went to a magnet school across town and had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to catch 2 trains and 2 buses and still get there just in time for the tardy bell. I need some sleep. The only anime I ever really got a chance to get into was Dragon Ball Z. I watched every single episode of that and I still had no idea that it was a sequel or that it was a manga before that. Like, I didn't even know what a manga was. Who left this book on the couch? Why is it backwards? So that's why I'm here. I recently started binging anime like I got a test tomorrow and I need somebody to talk to about it because it's crazy and I need to process this. So since it's October and Halloween's right around the corner, or it just passed depending on how long it takes for me to edit this, I thought I'd do something spooky. So I was skimming through Hulu's anime section and I discovered this little gem. The description wasn't giving me too much to work with, so I decided to look it up. Another is a mystery horror novel written by Yukito Ayatsuji, and it was later adapted into a manga by this guy. Not even gonna try. And eventually it became this anime that you love. Hopefully you love. I don't know. I haven't seen it. Now you won me over at mystery horror novel. I love mysteries and thrillers, and I'm totally down to get spooked, assuming it's not something that like legitimately scares me. Don't do that to me, man. That's not. I can't take it. Just as a warning, there will be spoilers. Sorry. Go watch it. First off, the opening theme. I really like the opening theme. I feel like if the show is supposed to be scary or like, at least kind of creepy, then the opening theme really needs to like show you that up front so you get an idea of what you're in for, right? And they had the creepy factor down packed with the opening theme, I think. It could have been a little creepier. Like, I would have preferred if it was a little creepier, actually, because it kind of fell somewhere between like the Castlevania theme and like It's a Small World ride at Disney. They wanted to be scary, but then they kind of punked out a little bit and gave you a little bit of upbeat to calm me back down. Don't baby me. I can handle it, or I can fast forward, but let me decide. So the closing theme is actually much creepier in my opinion than the opening, despite it having a much more positive sounding message. It's kind of like the melody mixed with the woman's very airy kind of voice. It gives it this sort of haunting quality that makes it so much more spooky and unsettling. And since every episode kind of ends with like this cliffhanger feeling of like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to feel about this, it ties into the ending theme perfectly. The show opens up with these 2 kids talking over like dark images about a curse that happens to the 9th grade class every year. And they're kind of like telling the story of the curse to each other, and it's really setting the mood for like what is going to happen here. They never exactly say what the curse is. They just say that like something really bad happens. You're never sure what until much, much later. So the actual story begins with our protagonist, Koichi Sakakibara, in the hospital. Apparently he has a collapsed lung for some reason, and he is missing his first day of school. He just moved to town and he was supposed to start school today, but he can't go because hospital. So these 3 kids from his class, who are the representatives of the class, decide to go, see him in the hospital and welcome him to town. There's Akazawa, Sakuragi, and I think Kazami came too. I don't remember. I'm sorry. They're kind of being weird about him. They're kind of being a little skeptical, and they're asking him, has he ever been to town before? And they seem really nervous about something, but he doesn't seem to be catching on, right? And the girl, Anazā, seems like really, really set on him having been there before for some reason. So they tell him, welcome to class, all this. We'll see you tomorrow. Hope you feel better. See you when you feel better. Whatever. Koichi finally gets released from the hospital, and he's getting on the elevator to go home or whatever, and he's trying to talk to his dad on the phone. His dad is not in the country right now. He's in India doing dad things, and he's not paying attention, so he walks onto the elevator, and the camera pans up, and there's this creepy little girl standing behind him, and I know for a fact that little girl was not on the elevator when he walked on there. Like, you cannot tell me that's not a ghost. He finally realizes that she's behind him, and she's standing there just looking very depressed. She has one eye, and she's holding a little creepy naked doll, and it's just, he's just talking to her like it's a perfectly normal situation that he's just encountered, even though it's weird, and she's trying to go down to the basement. There's nothing in the basement. Why are you going to the basement? But he's just having a normal conversation with her. Sees that she's wearing like his school uniform of his new school. He's like, oh, you go to my school? Well, maybe I'll see you around. And she's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And she walks off into the darkness of the basement. So, however many days passed, he finally gets to go to school for the first time, and he meets all his classmates. And you know how it is when you're in like a new school and you're from a different town, especially if you move to a small town. Everybody's in your face like, ooh, you're from this place? What's it like there? I heard they have these things. Like, you must be so cool, even though I don't know anything about you. So that's what everybody's doing. Everybody's crowding around him, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees the girl from the elevator. Misaki. She introduced herself. I didn't mention that. Her name's Misaki. She's sitting over there in the corner, just like not making eye contact with anyone, and just like in her own little world. And like as time goes on, he realizes nobody's talking to this girl. Like, nobody's even acknowledging her existence. Like, everybody's just, teacher doesn't even talk to her. Like, nobody, and I'm still convinced she's a ghost. Like, nobody's talking to this girl. Nobody has so much as made eye contact with her. She's not there. That's what I'm thinking. So, he's out and about wherever he was at the time, and he sees Misaki standing over by herself, and he decides to go over and talk to her. And she's being very cryptic, just in general. She doesn't seem like she wants to talk to him, and she keeps saying things that suggest that he's not supposed to be talking to her. Like, he's not supposed to even acknowledge that she exists, and he's just not catching on. Or maybe he just thinks like, everybody else is just being a jerk to her or something. But like, she seems like, hey, back off, whatever. This happens a few times, and every time it happens, the other kids in the class seem like they are freaking out, like, oh my God, don't talk to her, what are you doing? But they never say it to him. They never tell him, hey, Koichi, don't talk to Misaki. Like, I know you see her, but you don't see her. Like, don't, shh, she's not there, right? Because obviously there's a reason at this point that they are withholding information from him, and that, he's not supposed to talk to Misaki. I was thinking that, like, she's just a ghost, and everybody in this class sees her, and that whatever that curse was that they were talking about earlier has something to do with her. It's like, and if you talk to her, bad things are going to happen. When Koichi talks to Misaki, she kind of implies to him that he's really not supposed to be talking to her, and that the other kids are keeping something from him. She even kind of implies, the second time they speak, that the other kids kind of associate his name with death. And he was trying to figure out why that was. And he found out that while he was at the hospital, a girl had died. at the hospital that same day when all the kids came, and that's probably why they were there in the first place. They were there for that, it seemed like to me. So he had made friends with one of the nurses at the hospital, so he went to go talk to her about it to find out who this girl was. He was like, maybe he could find out some more information and figure out what it is that everybody's keeping from him. So the nurse is like real hype about it. She so wants to help. She's like, yeah, adventure, solving mysteries, woo! And I like that chick. She seems awesome, and that would be me. I want to do stuff. Okay, so the reason the other kids weren't really telling Koichi everything right up front is that the class appoints every year one person to be in charge of dealing with the curse. Like, they are in charge of making the plans and making sure everybody knows what they're supposed to do and keeping everything straight. And that person was Anazā, the chick who came to see him at the hospital. She was supposed to do it yesterday, but she was sick yesterday, and she didn't come to school, and she didn't know that Koichi was going to be starting school that day. So he did everything that they didn't want him to do that day, and she couldn't stop it. So when she got back and found out that he had been talking to Misaki, she kind of felt like it was too late to mention to him, you know, everything that she was supposed to mention to him about, like, not speaking to Misaki. So they had all crowded around him and were going to, like, basically tell him what the deal is and tell him, like, yo, you can't do these things, and, like, it's my fault for not, you know, telling you that up front, which is silly. Like, y'all should have told him that, like, while he was in the hospital, probably when you came to visit him, or maybe even on the first day of class when everybody was all crowded around him, freaking out about, oh, you're from Tokyo, Tokyo seems awesome. You should have been saying, hey, there's some crazy stuff happening in this class, like there's a curse and things, so, like, that girl over in the corner, she ain't there. Don't talk to her, right? Done. But no, they started doing stuff and made it more complicated. And that's what everybody keeps saying. Like, well, it's complicated now. Now it's too complicated to say anything. So they're having this conversation with him outside, and he looks up and sees Misaki walking away. And he's like, hold on, guys, I can't talk to y'all. I see a girl I like who y'all were telling me not to talk to, but I'm not listening. So he runs off after her. Being creepy, though, he never actually walks up and talks to her. He just stalks her for like 3-4 blocks and follows her home, basically. He follows her to, like, this doll shop. And it's full of all these creepy dolls and things. You know, the kinds with the opposable joints, the porcelain dolls that, like, look like they don't have souls because it's a doll, it doesn't have a soul, but it's creepy. And right when he gets there and he's looking through the window of the store, he gets a phone call from the nurse saying that the person who died in the hospital that they were wondering about, their name was Misaki. Yeah. So after the nurse calls him and tells him that, you know, the person who died's name is Misaki, he decides to go into the doll shop, you know, which is around where he last saw her, and look around for some reason. And there's a creepy old lady at the desk, and she seems like she's blind because she never actually makes eye contact with him, and she has on, like, these big grayed out glasses, all spooky like. And so he's walking around, and all these dolls are, like, weird, and some of them are in coffins and headless or bodiless, and it's just unsettling, right? So he gets to the end of the room that he's in, and there's a sign that says more downstairs. So he walks downstairs into the basement where there are more, you know, creepy dolls and things. And he walks up and he happens across this doll that looks exactly like Misaki. And I'm like, boom, called it, totally dead. It's a full-size doll, and it's in a coffin, like a big coffin, and laying there with its arms crossed, all dead like, and he's looking at it like, whoa. And then Misaki just shows up beside him like, hey, what are you doing here? And he's all like, what are you doing here? And they're having a conversation. You know, he says like, wow, this girl looks just like you. This doll looks like you. Are you the model? She's like, it's not me. Basically, she's like, it's not me. But I appreciate that you think it looks like me. Because apparently it's her cousin who looks exactly like her for reasons. And so they finally get to talking, and she takes him upstairs because she lives there. That's her house. And she finally explains to him what the deal is that everybody has not been telling him. Also, she showed him what's under the eye patch. She has glass eye. That's it. It's just a glass eye, different color from her other eye. She tells him what nobody has wanted to tell him, and that's basically that the class is cursed. Like, no matter where they move the 9th grade class 3 to, or what they call it, the class is always cursed. Like, every year that the curse happens, a student dies every month once the curse has started, in like horrible ways, or either somebody associated with with the students or with the class in some way. They can prevent the curse from happening by not talking to somebody and deciding that that person doesn't exist. And the reason that that works is because way back in the day, somebody named Misaki died somehow in the class, and like all the students just decided that they were just going to pretend that he was still there and just, you know, just say like, what are you talking about? Masaki's right there. He's fine. Like, and it went on so long that the principal even decided to like give him a seat at graduation and let him graduate with the rest of the class, even though he was dead and he was gone. After that happened, it seemed like something got opened up where death was just welcomed into the class. So now every year, a dead person, somebody who died previously associated with the class, shows up the next year and, you know, acts as a student, and nobody remembers. Nobody is aware that this person is dead. Everybody thinks that they're just another student or whatever. All the documentation has been altered, and it doesn't get fixed until like the next year when they find out like, oh man, that person was dead, and there's no way they can know. I don't know how Koichi feels about this, but I'm like, so Koichi lives with his grandparents, right? Because his dad's out of town, like I said. But his mother died, you know, when he was born. So he's been living with his grandparents and his aunt Reiko, right? Now, Reiko also happens to be his assistant homeroom teacher at the new school. And so, like, they've agreed that, like, at school, you will address me as Miss Mikami or whatever, or Mikami Sensei, however you want to say it. And, you know, that's just what it was. Since that was only said, like, once, you kind of tend to forget, or at least I did. I kind of forget. I shouldn't do that. I have a microphone there. Since they only said it once, you kind of forget that, like, Mikami is his aunt, is Reiko, like, they're the same person, because they only said it once. So, like, as the show goes on, eventually they decide that people start dying. That's what happens. Like, somebody dies, and they're like, oh no, the curse has started, and they're all blaming Koichi. But it's not Koichi's fault, because they didn't tell him, right? So they decide that the best way to resolve this is to maybe make 2 people not exist for the year. So Koichi now doesn't exist. So now Koichi and Misaki don't exist anymore, and they can talk to each other all they want, but nobody else can talk to them. And all the friends that they've made feel really awkward about it, because, you know, it's weird to just ignore your friend and not talk to them anymore for something like that. Throughout the rest of the year, people keep dying. Like, it didn't work. Ignoring Koichi doesn't work. It was too late. The calamity's already been started. And there was no way, as far as they knew, to stop the calamity once it started. Since the calamity can't be stopped anyway, and not talking to Koichi and Misaki isn't working, they decide that, like, screw it, y'all can exist again. We're all in this together now, so we're all friends. Yay. So they eventually hear about this guy who supposedly stopped the calamity his year, and it happens to be the same year that Reiko Koichi's aunt was in class 3, but she doesn't remember because nobody ever remembers who the dead person was or anything like that after it's happened. It's wiped from everybody's memory and everything goes on like normal, like nothing ever happened. They find this guy. They go on a road trip to go find this guy and try to find out what it was that he did, but he can't really remember. All he remembers is that he left a note for them somewhere. He left a message for them in the classroom, in the class 3 classroom. So they just figure out that like it has to be in the old class 3 classroom, from the part of the building that they don't use anymore, because apparently too much bad stuff happened in that room. They just closed it off. No more, right? So they decide, Koichi and his 2 friends decide that they're going to go look and try to see if they can find it so they can stop the calamity for themselves, because they don't want anybody else to die, right? They didn't tell Masaki. They were just going to go do it themselves, but Masaki just happened to already be at the school because she was in the art club and she likes to draw when she's by herself, get some alone time. So she heard what they were doing and decided to come along with them. So they all go up and look for whatever this clue is that this guy left for them. So they're searching all through the classroom and they finally find an old cassette tape. They try to play the tape, but it gets messed up because Hyper Kid freaks out when somebody tries to come through the door and pulls the tape out of the tape deck and like rips the tape. So like we didn't get to hear how to actually solve the problem. It's like a few days later, they finally fix the tape, and it turns out that the class 3 that year went on a trip to the shrine, which they already knew. They went on a class trip. But it wasn't going to the shrine and praying that ended the calamity early that year. What happened was that dude and some other kid who was on the trip, he can't even remember the dude's name, or he couldn't say it. It kept getting blocked out in the tape, like we're not allowed to hear it. They got into a fight and he ended up killing that guy. Like he bashed him over the head with something and he freaked out and he was hiding and he thought everybody was going to hate him. But when he went back to go talk to everybody about it and tell them, what he had done, nobody had even heard of that guy. Like he didn't exist. And that's when he realized that was the dead guy. He was the dead one that whole time. And he ended the calamity by killing the dead one. So that's what he told them. He was like, if you want this to end, you have to kill the dead one. Send them back to death, is what he said. That was the words. So they've got this information and now they're like completely reinvigorated to find out who the dead person is. Because the whole time, here and there, people have been like, we've got to figure out who the dead person is. Like, but then they kind of decided that, like, what would that do? What good is that going to do? We can't do anything to them. They're already, So, it got really stressful. Everything got really stressful. And this is when the poop hit the fan, because they decided to go on that same shrine trip, to pray and hopefully fix the things. But Koichi and friends didn't tell anybody what they had found, right? And for obvious reasons, you don't want everybody freaking out about, killing people. They go on the trip and they left the tape with the 2 other friends, and they had let people hear it. They let other people hear the tape. And since everybody is so traumatized right now because all their friends are dying, their family, their siblings are dying, everybody's dying in the most gruesome ways imaginable, they're freaking out. So when they heard send the dead ones back to death, they were like, there's no way I can know who the dead one is, so I'm gonna kill everybody until this is over. And several people went on that rampage. There was a kid in the class who died, and the hotel that they were staying at just happened to be his parents' hotels. And his mama went around killing everybody like a crazy axe murderer, because apparently she heard the tape as well, because she was standing outside the door when they were playing it, and she was like, oh, y'all gonna die. Y'all killed my son. That's it. Okay, so Hyper Kid is talking to his friend, who's been his friend for like ever since like 2nd grade, and they're outside and they have an argument because the friend can't remember some random thing that happened to them when they were kids. So Hyper Kid just decides that you're the dead guy. And he just pushes him off the balcony, and he thinks that the kid's dead. And he went around trying to ask, Misaki and Koichi if they remember the kid who he pushed off was Kazami, asking if you remember Kazami, and they're like, of course we remember Kazami. And he's like, I done messed up. If he was the dead one, you're not supposed to remember him. I just killed my friend. They're like freaking out. They're like, okay, he didn't fall that far, maybe he's not dead. So they go outside to check on him, and that's when they realize that like everybody's getting killed around them. They didn't notice it yet. So there's this kid who grabs their foot. He got stabbed in the back because he looked into the dining room, and the manager of the hotel is like strung up in the dining room, like, and it's on fire, and it's like just a horror scene. And then the other manager of the hotel is running around stabbing people, like it's just a mess. And they go outside, and Kazami's not there. He wasn't dead. He left. So they get back upstairs and running around. Everybody's dying, and we're running from everybody now. Because this other girl who heard that, that's how you get rid of it, she went on the loudspeakers of the hotel and told everybody. She played the tape for everybody and told everybody that, like, this is how you kill them. And basically she told everybody that Misaki is the dead one. Like, it has to be her, because she went to school with another girl who looked exactly like Misaki but wasn't missing her eye. And that girl died. That was the girl who died in the hospital. Misaki's cousin, who is actually her twin sister, but I ain't gonna go into. So she's convinced that Misaki is the dead person, so she tells everybody that, and now everybody's freaking out, and they're trying to hunt down Misaki. But at the same time, they figure out the one who's actually been killing everybody, along with the mother of the kid who died, was Kazami, because he didn't die when he fell off the roof, and he realized why he got pushed off the roof. You must think I'm the dead one, and the dead one must be the way to stop this, killing them. So he's just gonna kill everybody. And he was like, if I'm wrong, then I gotta find somebody else, and if I'm right, then it's over. Everybody wins. So everything's going to heck in a handbasket, basically, and it's a hot mess. And so, like, they're getting cornered left and right, kids coming out their room, running at them with, like, bats and objects or whatever they could find. Reiko, or Mrs. Mikami, as she is officially on this trip, jumps in front of them to, like, keep them from hurting Koichi, and basically gets her head bashed in, almost, but she didn't die, whatever. And so, like, everybody's running away, everybody's killing everybody. People keep thinking, like, Misaki is the killer, and they're trying to, like, get away and explain to everybody, or just find out who the dead one actually is so they can stop it. Now, here's the problem here. Here's where the one part where this show kind of, like, irked me just a little bit. I told you Misaki has a glass eye, right? It turns out her glass eye can see the color of death. She can see when people are about to die, and she can see who's already dead. And she's like, I don't know why this is. It's just a glass eye. It shouldn't be able to see anything. But that's what it is. So Koichi was like, so you know who the dead person is? You've known this whole time? And she's like, I've known for a while. So he's like trying to get her to tell him, but that's when everybody like keeps interrupting them, and they have to go running and all that kind of stuff. They finally make it outside. A bunch of people make it out. Not a bunch of people, but like a handful of kids don't die. And they make it outside, and they get around to the back of the building. Misaki tells him, like, okay, I can tell you who the dead person is right now. And she tells him this story of a year and a half ago. She was walking home from school down by the river, where she always does, and she saw this woman being attacked, basically, and she was stabbed and tossed into the river. She saw it, and that person was Reiko, Koichi's aunt. Like, she died a year and a half ago, and Koichi was there. He came to the funeral, but he doesn't remember. That's why, like, the girl, cause Anazā was like pressing him so hard about whether or not he'd been there before, because she remembered him. She met him when he came there a year and a half ago, for his aunt's funeral. And like, she's like, I know I met you. And that's why she knew he wasn't the dead person, because like, she met him and she remembers. So he finally remembers, like, oh my gosh, Reiko died. And like, I remember that. So he has to kill Mikami, the teacher, Reiko, his aunt, right then, to end everything. And he does. And happy endings. As happy endings can be, considering like half your class is dead. This class is the biggest class I've ever seen, because it seemed like at least 30 kids died to me. But, you know, yay. My overall opinion of this is that I loved it. Okay, I may not have done it like complete justice, just running through really quick everything that just happened, but it is so intense. Like, they build the world of this show so well, in my opinion. Everything is creepy. Every time you think you know what's about to happen, they flip it and something else entirely happens. Or like, they'll build suspense so much and then just release it. And you'll just be like on the edge of your seat and like holding his tummy, and then nothing. And then as soon as your guard is let down, somebody dies. Like, in like crazy unexpected ways, and you're like, oh no, it's so awful. So I would totally recommend this to anybody. If you haven't seen it, go see it. If you haven't seen it, I don't know why you watched this whole thing, because I just told you like everything, but I did a horrible job, so you'll probably like it a lot more than, yeah. So anyway, if you like this video, give it a like, share it, subscribe to our channel. We do all kinds of wacky vids and fun times here. So thank you for watching. Bye.